It was a quiet Tuesday morning when Emma landed in a city she barely knew. She had come for a high-stakes meeting with a potential investor, and her mind was already running through her presentation as she walked through the terminal. Business trips had become routine, but that day would be anything but ordinary. Near gate 12, her heels stopped. There was a boy sitting alone on the cold floor. No suitcase, no adult nearby, just a blanket and a backpack tucked beside him. He looked no older than 6. He wore a sweater 2 sizes too big and had braces on both legs. Emma looked around expecting to see someone return, a distracted parent maybe, but minutes passed and no one came. The boy's eyes were fixed on the window, watching planes take off. She approached slowly and crouched to his level. "Hey there, are you waiting for someone?" The boy looked at her. His eyes were clear and sharp. "No, they left. They said I was too much." Emma blinked. "Who left you here?" "My mom and dad. They said I couldn't walk and they didn't want to carry me anymore." His voice was soft, unapologetic, like he had made peace with the cruelty. Something twisted in Emma's chest. She sat beside him on the floor. "What's your name?" "I don't have one anymore, but I used to be Tyler." Emma's flight home wasn't until the next day, but she didn't make it to her hotel. Instead, she spent the afternoon making calls, first to airport security, then to child services, then to her own lawyer. That night, Tyler slept in a bed for the first time in days, and Emma, she didn't know it yet, but her life had just changed forever. The next morning, Emma watched Tyler eat a bowl of cereal like it was something rare and precious. He was quiet but alert, every movement careful, every glance measured, like he had learned early that life could shift at any moment. Emma had rearranged everything. Meetings were postponed. Her hotel reservation was cancelled. She told her assistant to clear her calendar for the week. It felt strange, yet completely right. By mid-afternoon, she was back on the phone with her lawyer. There was a process, of course. Paperwork, assessments. A social worker had already spoken with Tyler. There would be hearings, background checks, home visits. But the first step had been taken. Emma looked at Tyler that evening. "If it's all right with you, I'd like to call you Tyler. It's a strong name." He nodded. "I liked it before. I think I still like it." They spent the next few days learning how to be near each other. Emma wasn't used to children. Tyler wasn't used to kindness. But something between them began to settle, like 2 puzzle pieces that didn't look like they belonged until they snapped together. Emma noticed how sharp he was, how he remembered things she said word for word, how he could read through documents she left on the counter and ask questions no 6-year-old should be able to form. She made a mental note to talk to a specialist. That weekend, she brought him to a small park. He couldn't run with the other kids, but he watched with a calm interest that felt far older than his age. Emma sat beside him on the bench. "Dallas, you know what I do?" she asked. "You talk a lot in suits, and people listen. You make big choices." Emma smiled. "That's exactly right." And from that day on, Tyler wasn't just someone she had rescued. He was someone she had chosen, and someone who perhaps had chosen her right back. Emma enrolled Tyler in a private school that had strong academic support and a team familiar with special needs. She didn't want pity or limits placed on him. She wanted someone to see what she had already noticed, that Tyler was special. First few weeks were quiet. Tyler didn't talk much in class. He sat near the window and observed, but his test scores told another story. He finished assignments faster than anyone. He remembered everything: dates, patterns, entire stories. One afternoon, his math teacher called Emma. "He solved a logic puzzle I've used for years, one that no other student has ever figured out." Emma smiled. "Yes, that sounds like Tyler." By mid-semester, Tyler had been placed in an advanced track, not just for his grade level, but across the school. A psychologist came in for an evaluation. The results stunned everyone. Tyler's IQ was among the highest ever recorded at the school. News spread fast, first inside the school, then to local newspapers. Soon, Tyler was being invited to academic competitions. He went nervously to the first one, unsure of the crowd, but came home with a first-place medal in science and another in logic reasoning. Emma watched every competition from the front row. She never pushed, just smiled, supported and cheered. She didn't care about medals. She cared about seeing him believe he belonged. One evening after a tournament, Tyler looked at her and said, "Do you think they'd still want me if I couldn't walk?" Emma leaned down and met his eyes. "They want you because of who you are, not what you can or can't do." Tyler nodded slowly. He still carried the weight of that airport goodbye, but now he also carried something else, the certainty that he mattered. Tyler's story eventually made it beyond the local news. A regional TV station ran a segment about him, the boy with braces who outsmarted high schoolers. Cameras caught his shy smile and quiet voice. Emma stood off to the side, watching with pride and a quiet fear, because with exposure came attention, and attention sometimes woke up what should have stayed asleep. 2 towns over, a couple sat in silence watching the evening news. The man turned up the volume. The woman leaned closer. And then the boy on the screen said his name. "Tyler." The woman gasped. "That's him. That's our son." The man didn't speak, just stared. The face they had walked away from now filled the screen. Not crying, Not begging, but standing tall. They made a call the next day, to the news station, to a lawyer, to the adoption registry. A slow storm began to gather. Emma received the first letter 3 days later, a formal request from the biological parents for contact. It was cautious in tone, but clear in intent. They wanted to see Tyler. They claimed to regret what they had done. Emma folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. She didn't say anything to Tyler yet, not until she knew what this meant, not until she had help. That night, she called someone she had recently come to trust, William. William met Emma at a cafe near her office the next morning. He wore the same calm expression he always had, thoughtful eyes, the kind that didn't rush to answer but took everything in. Emma slid the letter across the table. He read it slowly. Then again, they waited years. And now that he's on TV, they remember they had a son? Emma's voice was low, steady, but her fingers tapped nervously on the cup. William nodded. We have options. His adoption is legal.
You did everything right, but it's not just about law now. It's about what's best for Tyler. They spent hours reviewing documents. William made calls. He confirmed timelines. The case, while emotionally charged, was legally stable, but
public pressure, emotional claims, and media interest could complicate everything. Emma didn't care about public opinion. She cared about Tyler. His world had just begun to feel steady. She didn't want to shake it. Later that evening, William came by the house. He brought a folder and a calm voice. Tyler was in his room reading. Emma made tea. Do you trust me? William asked. Emma looked at him. With this? Yes. It was the first time she'd said it out loud, and she meant it, because William wasn't just her lawyer anymore. He was someone who saw Tyler, who saw her, and who was ready to stand with them. The following days moved with a quiet intensity. Emma found herself replaying every word of the letter in her mind. She kept wondering if Tyler remembered their faces, if he missed them, if there was a tiny part of him still hoping they might come back. William became more present, not just as a legal shield, but as someone who truly cared. He visited often, bringing updates on the case, but also board games for Tyler and stories that made them both laugh. Emma started noticing the way Tyler's face lit up when William entered the room. Tyler had questions, of course. Emma knew they would come eventually. One night at dinner, he looked up from his plate and asked, "Why do people leave someone they made?" Emma paused. Her throat tightened. She reached across the table and took his hand. "Some people get scared of love that needs more, but that doesn't mean you were ever the problem." Tyler nodded slowly. He was old enough to understand pain, even if he didn't yet understand all the reasons behind it. That night, Emma found herself standing in the doorway of his room, watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, his arms wrapped tightly around a stuffed fox William had brought from a business trip. He looked so small, and yet everything about him felt so big. In the kitchen, William was reviewing a draft of their response to the biological parents. Emma poured tea and sat across from him. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was full, comfortable, real. "He's everything," Emma said. William looked up. "I know. And we'll protect that, together." Emma didn't reply. She didn't need to, because in that moment, something had shifted between them, not just in words, but in presence, in purpose, in love that wasn't rushed, but earned. The letter went out the next day. It was firm, but not cruel. Emma expressed gratitude for Tyler's life, acknowledged the biological connection, but made it clear that his well-being came first. Any contact moving forward would be considered only under strict supervision, and with Tyler's consent. Tyler found out soon after. Emma sat him down and told him gently. She didn't hide the truth. She didn't dramatize it either. Just the facts, delivered with love. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "Do I have to see them?" "Only if you want to," Emma said. Tyler shook his head. "They didn't want me when I was just me. Now I'm someone they saw on TV." Emma nodded, respecting his clarity. She knew this boy. She had watched him grow into his voice. Life didn't pause. Tyler went back to school. Competitions, weekend projects. Emma and William's relationship deepened. They moved slowly, not out of hesitation, but out of care. Tyler was always at the center. One weekend, they took a short trip together, the Dia de, 3 of them. By the lake, Tyler built a castle out of stones and told a story of a brave prince who found his own kingdom. William watched him, then looked at Emma. "He's becoming who he was always meant to be," he said. Emma smiled. "And we get to witness it." Spring arrived with soft winds and long days. Tyler spent more time outside, reading under trees or building cities from twigs and rocks. Emma and William worked during the day, but evenings were sacred. Dinner, laughter, stories. One evening, after Tyler had gone to bed, Emma and William sat on the porch. The sky above them was painted in deep blue and orange. William reached for her hand. "There's something I've been meaning to ask," he said. Emma raised an eyebrow, curious. "Go on." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple gold ring. "I want to do this with you, all of it, not just as your lawyer or your friend. As your partner. Will you marry me?" Emma stared at him. The moment didn't feel like a surprise. It felt like the final piece sliding into place. She smiled, tears threatening. Yes, of course, yes. They embraced under the fading sky, two souls who had built something real from the broken pieces of another life. The wedding was planned quietly, a small ceremony in a garden with only close friends and Tyler. He was the one who walked Emma down the aisle. He held her hand and looked up at her with pride. Later that night, after the music faded and guests had left, Emma and William sat with Tyler under the stars. She looked at the boy who had changed her life, then at the man who had helped her. "Keep it together. I have one more surprise," she said softly. Tyler turned to her, curious. "You're going to be a big brother." Tyler didn't say anything at first. He blinked, looked from Emma to William and back again. Then a small, stunned smile appeared on his face. "Really?" he asked. Emma nodded, her eyes full of warmth. "Really?" Tyler leaned back in the grass, staring up at the sky. "I've never been a big brother before." William laughed gently. "You're going to be a great one." From that night on, the house felt even fuller. Plans were made, rooms rearranged, books about babies appeared on shelves. Tyler took it seriously. He read everything he could about newborns. He even practiced reading bedtime stories out loud, determined to be ready. Emma made sure he felt included in every step. They talked about names, what color to paint the nursery, and which toys were safe. She watched him glow with purpose. The boy who had once been left behind was now preparing to lead someone else forward. Meanwhile, Tyler's accomplishments kept growing. He was selected for a national academic team. His photo was published again. This time, though, the attention didn't stir fear. William had handled the legal end, and the biological parents had signed an agreement limiting contact. Emma and William made it official. The final adoption hearing came and went, and Tyler stood proudly before the judge, holding both their hands. When asked if he wanted to stay with Emma and William forever, he answered without hesitation, "They're my family. I choose them." And so, what began at an airport gate became something unshakable, a bond stronger than biology, a family built, not by blood, but by love, choice, and time. Months passed, and the house filled with new sounds. Baby toys rattled, soft cries echoed in the night, and Tyler, now a proud big brother, adjusted to a life where love only grew. He helped feed the baby, held tiny fingers with care, and even read bedtime stories with dramatic voices that made the baby giggle. Emma and William often exchanged glances in awe, knowing just how far he had come. One evening, while holding his sibling, Tyler turned to Emma. "I never thought I'd get all this." Emma brushed a hand through his hair. "Sometimes life gives us what we never expected, but exactly what we needed." At school, Tyler continued to shine. He wasn't just the smart kid anymore. He was the kind one, the helper, the student who stayed after class to tutor others. William found joy in the ordinary, morning routines, quiet dinners, and long walks pushing a stroller beside Emma. He had built a family not from plans, but from presence. Emma stood one afternoon at the same airport where everything began. She wasn't rushing to catch a flight. She was simply picking up a colleague. But standing there, she couldn't help but glance toward Gate 12. It was empty now, just a few travelers passing through. But for her, it would always be sacred ground, the place where she found Tyler, the place where everything changed. She returned home to laughter, to a baby learning to walk, to a boy building rockets from cardboard, to a husband setting the table. And as the sun dipped behind the trees, Emma looked at her family and whispered to herself, "We are exactly where we're meant to be." If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below and tell us what part moved you the most. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more real and inspiring stories like this one.